Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Aliens and Angels live podcast. Today is September 21st, 2025, and my guests are Tillie and Artemaeus Treadwell. I want you all to know that, I must be getting somewhere with my YouTube channel because now I'm being shadow banned. So I was just over 2,000 subscribers a couple of days ago, and now YouTube has unsubscribed some of my subscribers. I don't know who or why or what. So if you're subscribed to my channel, please do double check and make sure you're still subscribed. That would really help me out a lot. And besides that, I have one other quick announcement, and that is I want you all to know that I do use AI just for the thumbnail and the background, but there is absolutely no AI content during the show. So my guests and I are just speaking from our hearts, from our real experiences, and we're not relying on AI. And I think it's important for us to start telling our audiences that so they can choose whether or not they want to watch AI or not. So today I'm very happy to bring on for the first time my psionic pal, Tillie Treadwell, along with Artemaeus, who actually was on the Aliens and Angels show once before. It was wonderful to have them both on. Let me tell you a little bit about Tillie. Tillie Treadwell is an American author and psionic experiencer. Her very earliest memories include what seem to be paranormal encounters, and the other side has always played a central role in her life. She was co-lead of an exorcist and investigative team with the Catholic Church, has worked as an independent tarot interpreter, healer, medium, and advisor, and today is an author for Zontar Press, a publishing house run by Tim Swartz of Ancient Aliens. She also writes for Outer Limits magazine and the Quad Coalition of Sciences. Notably, a piece of hers will appear in a new book by Malcolm Robinson of SPI in the UK, and she is currently hard at work on several other book inclusions and some standalone volumes with Zontar Press. When not writing, she can be found embracing creative hobbies and assisting specialists with the discovery and implementation of a new novel treatment for I hope I'm saying this right, porphyria, a rare genetic condition that renders a person unable to bear exposure to sunlight, with which she was born. Artemaeus and Tillie have proudly made featured guest and partner status with the 2025 Full Disclosure Now conference and are in consideration for speaking at the 2026 event. I want to thank you all in advance for liking and for commenting. And of course, please do check your subscription to my channel and please do share my content with your friends. And you can find all of the links, including for Tillie and Artemaeus, in the description below. I hope you'll all join my YouTube and my Rumble channels so that you can receive my perks and help to support my channel. So without any further ado, let me bring onto the stage Tillie and Artemaeus. Welcome. And how are you folks doing today?
I'm doing very well, Artemaeus. I'm pretty certain just having a good day as well. What about you, Karen?
I'm having a pretty good day. We're coming into fall here, so all the trees are changing color. It's a little bit nippy at night, and soon the frost will be on the pumpkin, as they say. So, and I don't really mind. I love the autumn and the spring. I enjoy summer. Winter's a little hard to take, but we get through it. I just stay busy, my podcasts, my hobbies, and things like that. I just want to say a quick welcome to Denise. Denise is in the live chat. She is my ever faithful and wonderful friend. She is doing the moderating, and she will remind people of different, your website or whatever your links are, your main links. Let's see, we've got one right here that says Tillie Treadwell's YouTube, the Weird Walk Home channel, and she'll continue to do that as well as moderate throughout the day, and soon other people will be arriving too. Sunday, it's 12 o'clock where I live, which is mountain time, but on the Pacific coast, it's still 11 o'clock. Some people are just started dragging themselves out of the bed this time of day. People want to take a little bit of time off. So today I want to talk a bit about, Tillie, your ET experiences, and that, of course, includes interdimensional, transdimensional. If you want to include um, um, extraterrestrials from other worlds, if you want to include interdimensionals from other realms, it's a big, busy place all around us. And it's wonderful when I can share time with other people who perceive beyond the veil as well. It's just such a comfort to me. I'm so glad to have you on the show. You could also include angels or anything you want. That's all cool. And then for about the last half of the program, I want you to tell everybody about your latest book, and when is that available, and or anything else you want to talk about. So, you and Artemaeus, do you want to, first of all, say anything that I might have left out at the beginning of the show to my audience?
Yes, thank you, Denise, for being here and for moderating and all the beautiful things that you do for our friend Karen. Aside from that, we do have some, I think, pretty neat updates that, Karen, you might be interested in and that the audience might enjoy too. Artemaeus, why don't you fill everyone in?
Yes. So I guess this would be my domain, the supposed science portion. So that's supposed. I put that in air quotes because we don't know everything, right? We're just learning and discovering as we go. But when we attended the Full Disclosure Now conference over the summer here in St. Pete Beach, Florida, so it was in July, there was a gentleman there with a company that he started called Sound Living, and he brought with him many different tools for measuring different types of metrics that, at least here in the West, we haven't quite caught up with for exploring our own bodies and our own health and how things operate. So one of the tools that he brought was something that measured your brain waves. And for the audience, I'm not a neuroscientist in any way. This is a very generic breakdown of the information. I'm sure that there will be inaccurate things that a real doctor could tell me. I could correct. But so there are four major brain waves that people spend most of their time in throughout a day. There's alpha, beta, theta, and delta. So alpha would be the state that we consider to be meditative, where you're, calm, plugged in, but not asleep generally, or anything of that nature. It's just meditation. Beta would be the usually either fight or flight, or just the focused, blinders on, getting, autopilot, getting your things done throughout the day. And that could be high beta or low beta. So the fight or flight, which is I'm panicking, to the I'm just, putting my head down and doing my work. The theta being the twilight, which is that period between sleep and awake. And some people might recognize that if they've ever had twilight anesthesia or something like that, where it seems like you're not quite there, but you kind of are. So some strange things can happen in that state. And then there's delta, which is deep sleep, typically. So I'll say that because that sets me up for the information that we discovered between Tillie and I. When we measured our brainwave states, I was put in a very particular but typical setup, which was headphones on with a track that was meant to help me get into a meditative state. I had my eyes closed and I would recline back, not talking to anybody. And my brainwave states initially showed some beta, which is pretty typical. And then after a time, they went into alpha, so I was able to achieve that meditative state. And then I was also running a fair amount of theta, which is a twilight state. Interesting to note that with some practice, somebody like me or the average person can definitely achieve different brainwave states. Tillie, on the other hand, was completely set up different from myself. She did not have any headphones on. She had her eyes open and she was talking to the gentleman who was running the tests. Paul is his name. And what we discovered was that her brainwave states were entirely missing the beta, which is kind of a key feature of most humans day to day, the average human. And she was running exclusively in alpha, theta, and delta, which for, again, the average human is when we are in our deep sleep. We are not supposedly up, awake, conscious, talking, certainly not carrying a coherent conversation or anything like that. So her brainwaves being very, very different and unexpected actually lent some insight and some proof to the claims that Tillie has always made, which is that she's neither here nor there when she says I'm not really here part of the time, is because her brainwave states are essentially plugged into what some people would say is the dream realm, which might also be the other side of the veil, what we get peeks into when we, as the average human, go to sleep. Tillie, would you like to add anything to that breakdown?
Yes, sure. The findings from that and another experiment, which we can get into maybe on another show, blew away the scientists so much that they wanted to keep working with us. So we have a date in October to go back and continue our scientific study. And I might be going out to work with the Monroe Institute to help with further research about brain waves and what a lot of people would call the veil, and then eye structure, ear structure, because I also have a different eye and ear structure, as well as the porphyria, as Karen had so kindly introduced earlier in the show. This gets into the new book that I'm writing, which is called Tales from the Rift. It is technically a fictionalized account of just a handful of some of the encounters that I've had or that I've counseled some other people's on, human and otherwise. But science now is coming to believe that the reason I have all of these experiences and the reason that other types of people get along with me as well as they do and they seek me out as often as they do has to do with a different physical and chemical profile that I have possessed since birth. So, for example, my eye structure is different, which is why my eyes are massive comparatively to most people's. The eye doctors have found that I seem to have a thinner lens than most people around me here. So children tend to develop a much thicker lens between about the ages of 7 and 13, and they stop seeing further into the light spectrum. And this doesn't seem to be quite the case with me. That's just one difference with my eye structure. And my ear structure is unique as well. I don't I don't possess all of the language to explain all of that, but that's the basic rundown. I seem to be able to see and hear beyond what the more common person around me can. And then with my neurodivergence, I'm diagnosed as being level 1 autistic with very low ego content and very low emotional content. And a lot of non-human people really love that about me. And this benefited me extremely well, especially when I was working as a type of exorcist with the Catholic Church. But human beings don't tend to like me very much, if I'm completely honest, because I have a much broader view of things, and I don't believe in, for example, good and evil or anything like that. So I just consider it myself at this point to be like a quantum story collector, and I'm just here to meet everyone and anyone wherever they are and see if we can work together to see how the story unfolds at the crossroads.
Wonderful. Now I have a question for you, but if it's too personal, don't answer it.
Of course.
You have complete control over what you're comfortable with on this show. But when I first saw you and heard about you, partly from Artemaeus, I wondered if you were a hybrid, ET human being. And the reason I asked that is because my own background being autistic, I have spent so much time of my life being here and being someplace else. And it's allowed me to see the other side of the veil. And I've written my own book about my experiences. But I don't identify as a hybrid, although it's intergenerational contact has happened in our family. But I'm wondering, because what you've just said about the brain waves, about your physical and your spiritual, the way you are, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the way you are. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love it. And I love that you come out and talk about it. Super
Thank you.
important to me. But do you think there's any chance that all these other words describing you are just part of another perspective on seeing you as part ET, or do you think not, that you're fully human and it has nothing to do with the
Well,
transdimension? What's your take? It's your life, so I should ask you what your take is on it.
oh no, that's all right. I really appreciate the questions, and I get that question essentially all the time. But I choose not to label myself really because I want people not to see me for my genetics. I want people just to see me as a person, as much as I can
Mm-hmm.
help it, anyways, because I have found that there's, at least in my opinion, way too much tribalism and
Mm-hmm.
hatred and worship and whatnot, and I don't really want to be involved in that. I just want to be here as best as I can to walk my brothers and my sisters home and collect stories, whoever I may be and whoever they may be. So if someone thinks that I'm an angel, I'll be an angel. If someone thinks that I'm a devil, that's what I'll be for them. If they think that I'm a fairy or an alien or a human, I don't mind any which way. I think that all the points are possibly valid and accurate, at least in some ways, and I support every perception of me, whether that be good, evil, somewhere in between, human, non-human, somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
between there. It's not really my personal focus. So I am
Mm-hmm.
I am whatever you dream me to be, baby.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I try to stay away from labels too, because words are such a source of misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Um, I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what that means when you say, or when Artemaeus or I or whatever refer to you as having low ego. What does that actually mean? Or what does that actually look like? That would be awesome to know that.
Absolutely. Well, I will let Artemaeus handle the clinical portion of that because he's able to communicate that a lot better and a lot more clearly. But for me, having low ego content, this means that I lack the internal storytelling mechanisms that most people around me tend to have.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that you and I are having a conversation about politics or religion and our place in each of them. And let's say that you are, just for an example's sake, you're a Christian and you believe in and you worship the Christian God and you believe that you are a good person based on that, which I'm not judging that either way. I have no judgment whatsoever. For me, if you were to come to me and ask me questions like that, I will say something like, okay, I personally see these benefits and these problems with the system that you are proposing, and this does or does not make sense to me, and I prefer not to have any story going in my head. Thank you, Denise. I appreciate that. So I don't tend to prescribe any kind of subjective labels to anyone or anything. Getting back to that good versus evil as an example, um, goodness, there's a lot to it, but my inner world is simultaneously a blank slate and a kaleidoscope. So that's why I said, whatever someone labels me to be, I'll be that for them, and it'll be just as sincere, because so everything and nothing, the alpha and the omega. Essentially, that's the state that I live in. But I think Artemaeus will do a much better job at explaining this, because I always have a hard time explaining, to be honest.
That's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was great.
I was going to say, you didn't do a good job. I can just add some supplemental for, I guess, the average Joe like myself, anybody like that listening. I will add that some people might hear what you last said and liken that to somebody who is a chameleon, somebody who will people please or blend into situations just to go along and get along. And that is still an ego feature, which is not something that Tillie has. It is separate from that. And the best way that I have heard somebody describe ego is that it's an acronym that stands for Earth Guide Only. And when you think about the major focuses of our animal brains, the lower portion, the primal portion of our brains, it really only has a handful of focuses. It's concerned with survival, making sure that this meat suit stays upright and operational, and that it continues, reproducing its genes, down the line, eat, sleep, all those basic things. And most people don't realize, I think, that their choices, their day-to-day behavior still revolves around that, just plugged into social situations. So over time, a human will learn through their experiences which seem to give them better outcomes socially, or for survival. How do you procure food and mates and things like that? And we like to think as humans that we're higher and above that, but really we're not on average on the whole. And so I always say that Tillie is without survival skills, because she would find, speaking to a random stranger on the street at night to be just as interesting and safe and okay. She's obviously learned better over time as somebody out in, I don't know, broad daylight in the middle of the mall or something like that. Like there's no differentiation there, because her brain is not considering survival as an important thing to keep in mind. And it makes sense, because if you are a being that's plugged into another dimension where death is but an illusion, and or it's simply passing your soul from one dimension to another, death really isn't that much of a concern. So your parameters for how you go about your day to day, how you interact with other people, are going to be totally different. There's no selfish motive there, which is something else that the ego is designed to help us with, which is very self-focused. And when I say ego centered or egotistical, again, a lot of people will have a negative association with that, thinking that this is something you should not be, which that's the ego interpreting, oh, socially that's a bad thing, so I shouldn't be that way, even though having an ego here is crucial, because it allows you to survive while you are here and do certain things, have certain experiences here. So it's part of the story that you have running in your head that determines some of your behavior, and Tillie doesn't really have that. So hopefully that kind of gives a little bit of insight, give enough
Yeah,
complimentary.
that's awesome. Now I'm wondering if I could just recap to see if I understand it properly. Well, not properly, but as you're intending it. Let me put it that way. So first of all, ego helps us to survive by recognizing, say, unsafe situations where Tillie might not see it as unsafe because in her world, she sees that we're all important and that there's a much bigger picture than what most so-called, pardon me for the expression, normies believe there is. And when you can see things from many different dimensional realities and different energies and all of that, you're looking at this great big picture, so you can lose sight of the microcosm or whatever. I myself, being autistic, also have a very hard time reading the room or recognizing danger and people that don't have my best interests at heart. And it's been caused me quite a bit of suffering, and I don't seem to learn because I don't seem to have that. But I'm not trying to compare myself to you, Tillie. I think you're an extraordinary person with extraordinary abilities. I'm just from my little world trying to look out to see if I understand what you're saying, which I think is a movement that we're all, not all, but quite a few of us are coming out as experiencing the world this way. And I think one of the really good things is we can put away war and contentiousness and gossip and targeting, and none of that exists in our world. But what's interesting is when we interface with so-called normal people or typical people, they will assign motives to us that we never would even think of in a million years, because that's how they see the world. And many people see their reality as the reality, and they don't realize there's so many, like, it's really like what you said. If you want to perceive me as an angel, fine. If you want to perceive me as a fairy, fine. There's so many perceptual arenas. Boy, it's pretty overwhelming. Sorry, I did not mean to get on a rant about it. But please feel free to correct me, because we're talking about your situation and your reality, not mine. But I think you've both done a really amazing job of describing it.
Thank you. And no, you're absolutely correct. That's part of how I experience this world. And a lot of people ironically find me to be a horrible person or violent without even getting to know me, because for me, part of being low ego and low emotional content is I don't have the understanding of the neurotypical motives here. And so I'll often make social faux pas that to them, they look at and they think that there's something malicious or controlling, when for me, it's just an innocent expression of my neurodivergence. And two, a lot of typical human beings have no separation between fact and opinion. And they also tend to be extremely avoidant and dishonest. And I don't operate like that. And I'm not necessarily judging them for how they operate. It's just, for me, I'm a very upfront person with almost everything. The only things that I hold back are things that could get me or someone else killed. And even then, I'm really strategic, and I try to be as honest and upfront as possible, because I do genuinely want to give everyone as much of a head start and a complete picture as I possibly can. So these other people, they will misunderstand me for my objectivity, think that I'm a hateful person or whatever, and they won't even talk to me. You know what I mean? They'll talk to everyone else about me behind my back, but they'll never talk to me, and then they'll just ice me out. And I've lost a few big book contracts because people are not going to be just upfront and honest with me the way that I request them to be. And I just, at that point, I'm like, okay, well, I'm very sorry that I couldn't set up a situation or a relationship where you feel comfortable enough to be honest and direct with me. But rarely do I let that person know, like, I know you lied. I know you stabbed me in the back. And I see the bigger picture here. But I get tired of being painted as evil or malicious for all of those types of misunderstandings when those massive hypocrisies exist and they can't even be bothered to be, honest. So,
Yeah.
what were you going to say, hon?
To add to that, that's the ego story that's running in somebody's head. So it's running there
Yeah.
because of prior experience that they had, or something that they think they know, not necessarily that they know. The ego says, hey, this might be an unsafe situation, and or you might be treated unfairly here, and they're going to tell that story to themselves and project it onto the person in front of them without asking questions, without being objective, being curious and getting to know. And that's what's interesting about the beta state. When people are in that beta state day to day, they might not think they're in fight or flight, but when you are in that state, curiosity is dead. So literally the portion of your brain that connects to and being able to be curious, I worded that poorly, but it goes offline essentially, because when you think about it, if you're running from something terrified for your life, the last thing you're going to stop and go is, what animal is that chasing me? Maybe I should learn a little bit more about that. So when people not being curious, they don't realize that they are already running in a low grade fight or flight response every single day. This is chronic stress, that chronic stress that we talk about, and people think, I've got bills and I've got kids, and it goes even deeper than that, though. So if you can't stop
Yeah.
being curious about something to be objective, it makes it quite literally impossible for you to have a genuine relationship with somebody, which is what the vast majority of people are wandering around with all the time, and then wondering why they feel alone or isolated.
Yeah.
It's all connected.
Yeah, and that state of fight or flight, I don't know, for me, it also leads to burnout. But I've learned, it's taken me many, many years, but I've learned to listen to my body. Boy, is it a good director. The only problem is, like, I'll have an absolute warning which hits me in my solar plexus, really intense feeling of warning when I'm in a situation, but my mind doesn't know how to translate it. So I'm looking around trying to find what the threat is, and I may not realize for 2 or 3 days later, which is a bit funny in itself. But I wanted to also say, I'm very much a recluse. I don't go to a lot of social gatherings anymore because I discovered that people were inviting me to their social gatherings because I was odd and different. And they get into conversations with me, and then afterwards they'd all make up their own stories of what I'm about, or laugh at me, or laugh about how stupid or how weird I am or whatever, to make themselves feel like they're more normal. And so I've come to certainly appreciate neurodivergent friendships. And I tell people, don't hint. You have to be absolutely clear with me. This is what you're saying. You cannot hint. You cannot beat around the bush and expect me to get it. I won't get it. If my whole life depended on it, I wouldn't get it. But the good news is we have this whole other side of our being where we can connect with all kinds of realities and beings, and our lives are so rich and so amazing that for me it totally more than makes up for the lack of human contact in my life. Anyway, I didn't mean to make it all about me. Tillie, do you want to talk a bit about anything that I didn't touch on that you want me to, and then maybe talk a little bit about some of your ET or transdimensional or angelic experiences? I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, sure. For perhaps just a little bit more background, Artemaeus, he's gone through quite the transformation with me, he and actually some of his family members, because a big problem that I face with people who are more egoed than myself is that they meet me and they immediately will decide, thank you, Denise, that I'm evil, I'm out to get them, etc., etc. And so they will, instead of getting to know me and instead of giving me the benefit of the doubt, they'll jump into accusing me of being evil and out to get them, and they will then excuse immediately all forms of abuse towards me for me being different, or, just because they think that I'm a bad person or I'm evil, whatever. And Artemaeus and his family, it got pretty bad at one point. One of his family members put it in writing, threatening to murder me, essentially, if I didn't disappear. And I was involved in a very long-term, unfortunately, abusive relationship with Artemaeus because I don't have family. Like, I was born to a family that didn't even want me, that didn't like me. I was supposed to be something completely different. And so I had no backup. I had no way to get out. I had no money. And over the years, though, of being with him and him seeing all of the paranormal events around me, him getting to, like, being forced essentially to live with me and understand me, he realized over time how messed up and abusive everything was. We moved away. He got into therapy. He allowed me to work with him too in many different ways. And now we are here, and he has healed generations of trauma thanks to working with me and getting to know me and how I think, how I operate. And his family has as well. And that includes some of the elders in his family. And so I believe that love and transformation are possible in every situation in at least one of the timelines. And that's what I hope to consistently encourage through the paranormal and through curiosity, if that makes sense. That's really all I had to add. Honey, do you have anything that you'd like to toss in there?
Well, and teaching people non-human psychology, that's kind of the big portion of it. That's the healing salve, the medicine, I think, is that in we, as humans, our day-to-day life bumping up against other humans, it's like a vicious feedback cycle where we are consistently abusing one another because of the abuse that we have gotten. And so until somebody steps up and breaks the cycle, it's very tough to stop that freight train and that consistent recycling of behavior. And for me, because I never had an example of what healthy, quote unquote, looked like, which I would consider at least a good smattering of non-human psychology to be quite healthy to implement just in day-to-day life. Obviously, with the caveat knowing that not everybody around you is aware of this, so you have to exercise, personal responsibility in decision making. But because I had Tillie to model for me for the first time in my entire life what that looked like, it was, as she said, forced exposure. I began to, through her consistency, understand really what that was, that it did indeed exist, and that more was possible, more could be improved, really. So, and then for me, that's kind of what the paranormal represents anymore. I have such a positive experience with it. Even the stuff that I would say wasn't so pleasant or savory. Really, I believe that they are, as they say, character building experiences. But that's the lens that I choose to see it through. Again, I don't choose that tribalism, that evil, good versus evil in my day-to-day life anymore. It's fun to listen to the stories just to be entertained for me, but I don't put more weight into that, an entire identity into it anymore. And in stepping back away from that, understanding that the ego can and often is the seat and source of mental illness, taking it out, looking at it, studying it, and then comparing it to the non-human psychology has been, as she said, nothing short of transformative, stuff that I think I talked about in our podcast the last time we spoke, Karen. And so I think that's now that we are post disclosure, the thing that we often like to at least say once throughout our talks is that we know that these things are happening now. We're talking about them. We're more open about it. What do we do with it? Now it's not just a matter of, does this happen? Is it a thing? Yes, it is. And, we have a few different paths we can choose. We can choose the ego path, which is very, I would consider like the government option, which is, shoot it dead kind of thing, unless it's something that can serve us essentially. We can take that, aggressive oppositional stance, or we can be curious and get to know these things and see if it's something that we can incorporate, cooperate with for the type of reality that we really do want to live, whatever ability of free will that we have. How can we direct that in a very conscious way, knowing that these things are around? So that's all I wanted to add.
That's super interesting. What's funny, not funny, ha ha, but funny is how what I love is about interviewing other people with similar circumstances, not the same, but similar, is I start to see all this affirmation that I'm on the right track. I'm perceiving it as it really is. So in my book, I refer to people like you, Tillie, as quantum mechanics. And, if your car breaks down, you take it to an automotive mechanic. But when the quantum needs work, you take it to a quantum mechanic. It's a bit of a play on words, too. But we're collapsing negative timelines because we're dealing with intergenerational dysfunction. And it's a hard road to haul, but we're collapsing negative timelines. We're helping produce new timelines. We're correcting the current timelines, and there's no more important work, and yet we get zero in the way of a recognition for the amount of work, and it is work that we do. So I'm thinking you're an amazing, both of you are amazing role models, for everybody, because this is the new way that we need to be as human beings. And when we start getting good at it on a mass scale, then we are going to be welcomed into a greater share of transdimensional contact with our spiritual brothers and sisters and cousins, because they've already done this work and they're waiting for us to step up and get there too. Sorry, I always go on a bit too much here, but I just wanted to throw in that I think you're awesome quantum mechanics, and I'm so glad to have met you and see you.
Well, that's okay. And I appreciate the praise and the feedback. I would just like to put the disclaimer on, like, for myself, I don't claim to be a good person or anything of that nature. I don't claim to be necessarily anyone or anything to anyone. I want everyone to decide for him or herself what
Mm-hmm.
I am, what my purpose is in their life and whatnot. I would just like to say that I do my best to be loving, to be kind, and to respect and meet people where they are at, whatever that means for them, and not to judge or label their journey. Like, I definitely crave a deeper relationship with a lot of people, but I know that the way that I think is pretty far out there comparatively. So in learning more and more over the last year or so, I've begun to understand, and I'm able now to have some empathy. Thank you, Denise. I'm able to have empathy now for where more egoed people are coming from, and it's a lot easier for me to let it go when people stab me in the back, or they're lying to me, or they're pulling away from intimacy, even though I know and or have proof of a totally different, reality. But everyone is on their own time, and I just enjoy meeting people at their own personal crossroads. So
And I'll
Oh,
to add to that just a little bit more, expand on it because I figured you would, which is good. That we don't believe that what we're doing is something that should be put on everyone. So this is where the
mhm,
objectivity comes back, is that while
mhm,
we believe and we want that for ourselves and for the other people around us that also wish for that, we are of the mindset that this decade between 2020 and 2030 there is a timeline split. There's a separation going on where people that wish to live those timelines where there's more struggle, more war, more suffering, more all of those things, that their souls can experience that as they wish, and that the rest of us, even though we will be on the same planet, there will be less communication, run in, intermingling between that,
mhm.
and that, we fully respect that those people want to, enjoy that, live that, and we're not here to change their mind, but we are here to um, co-create and cooperate and live amongst the other people who share these same values and interests and goals that we do. We just it's just that little bit, not trying to saying that someone
Oh,
should
great.
or that it must be, that's keep
Yeah.
that separate.
No, these are very, very, very good points. And I love that you can both be really honest with me and feel comfortable enough, to share how you're really thinking and feeling and how you really are. I'm wondering now if we could just segue a little bit into ET or slash. I mean, I don't even know what to call the phenomenon anymore because no one word really describes it all. From the spiritual realms to the interdimensional to the transdimensional to the ET that are three-dimensional to cryptids that live here or beings that we think are ETs that actually have lived here longer than we have. Like there's so many, there's such a big picture. But I'm wondering, Tillie, do you want to take a stab at it and just tell me and my audience a little bit about some of your experiences?
Yeah, I can certainly do that. As I mentioned before, I have a new book coming out called Tales from the Rift. That's going to be available on October 1st. And although it is technically fictionalized versions of just some of the events that I've had with non-human people and or human people who have been trustworthy and shared their tales with me, um, I have a lot that I can share behind the scenes, essentially, where those stories came from. And I think a good place to start would be, as we see, during the Halloween season. So I wrote in the book 4 different seasons, and the tales span all the different American holidays. One of those is, of course, Halloween. One of the tales is called Deal, and it is about a young man who goes out trick-or-treating with someone, a little one in his family, his little sister, and he has an unexpected encounter. And this encounter turns into a life-changing, lifelong deal. And some of the people would call the non-human person in this story the devil, but this is far from the case. And I've found this often in my encounters with non-human people, that they will adopt whatever mask the human being wants or needs in order to help that human being ultimately learn and grow on their own journey. And then, of course, it does also help the non-human person to learn and grow too, because they're being exposed to a completely different way of being, thinking, feeling, and living. So the story behind Deal is rather a conglomerate of a bunch of my own experiences with a multitude of different non-human peoples over the entirety of my lifetime. And one of the biggest factors in the psychology behind that story was my encounter with someone that I can't name. Artemaeus can't name either because of a deal that we have with this person. But this was the being behind Artemaeus's, you could say, most negative encounter ever. And after the encounter, I met up with this non-human person to apologize for my role in it because I had accidentally stepped on their toes. And we sat down together quite literally at the dining room table, and we were talking about what had happened, why it happened, and then I was asking this person questions about how they perceived the entire situation and what their role was in relation to the grand scheme of humanity. And this person confirmed for me what a lot of other non-human people have said, which is that they switch out masks as need be for different archetypes and different figures. And they will pretend, for example, to be Papa Legba or the devil or an angel or Jesus or Mary, etc., etc. And the human being will experience it to be incredibly positive or incredibly negative, whatever the judgment may be. But then, as the years go on, the human being will see that their life turned out a very specific way, and typically incredibly positive, quote unquote, or at minimum, much healthier in the long run, simply thanks to that event that they, or that person that they had originally judged as being bad or evil, um, back when the event had occurred. Does that make sense? So,
Absolutely does. And it explains. A good friend of mine is Preston Dennett, and he's written over 30 books about different ET contact. Some people see ET as being healers who heal them. Some people have these terrifying experiences, but what's interesting is the people that have the terrifying experiences over time, they actually come to see it as being a positive interaction. And I think you might be really onto something here, because we want to put everything in these little baskets. This is good, this is evil, and then, of course, I'm going to just blame a lot of organized religion for perpetuating intense fear. Like when I was growing up, I was having paranormal experiences, and from my family, I got, don't talk like that because people are going to think you're crazy and that's going to put a black mark on our family. Or I would go to different religions looking for explanations, and then I was told, "Oh, you don't want to do that. That's dancing with the devil. That's leaving yourself open to demonic influences." And I knew I wasn't crazy, and I knew I wasn't evil, and it just was very, very difficult. Again, I'm sorry, I'm taking a long road
No,
no,
that's all
explaining to
great.
you. But
yeah,
I think your explanation is fantastic, and it really explains the diversity of contact that we as humans have. And I think probably the best opportunity, like what you and Artemaeus have already talked about, is dealing with our egos. Because when we get to that point where we can subdue it, we can be more open to these other beings. The fact that we're communicating with them alone is something I think highly significant. And I myself have not had any evil, horrible, demonic experiences or anything like that. So this is very, very interesting. And your book is coming out October the 1st. And what's it called again?
it's called Tales from the Rift. Right now, we are in the very final stages of publishing, and hopefully, I will have a really nice pre-order option list available soon. It's going to be available in digital, paperback, and in hardcover. And of course, if anyone would like a custom autographed version of the hardcover, please feel most welcome to reach out to Artemaeus and I, and we will be more than happy to coordinate that for you, because I've been getting requests for that. So I want to let people know that is on the offerings as well. But regarding the psychology of these non-human people, whether it's been the fae or the jinn, gods, goddesses, angels, the demons, even the so-called quote-unquote devil himself, they all say the same thing, that non-human people mostly exist to be a mirror to human people. And so the human actually sets the contract, sets the tone. So if a human being shows up having all of these preset judgments and being negative, for example, or immediately labeling something as good, or mistaking a non-human person as a human spirit, that non-human person is either typically going to completely choose to oppose whatever that human being is saying because there's a certain lesson that they want to impart with that, or they're going to completely lean into what that human being is saying because there's some other goal. And it really just depends on the combination of the human being and the non-human person. So when I was a non-religious exorcist for the Catholic Church, we would go in and, of course, investigate. Sometimes it was businesses, sometimes it was property, sometimes it was residential places. But a lot of the time, it came down to investigating people. I found out through observing all of the patterns. And I found that time and time and time again, no matter what kind of non-human person was there, they always said the exact same thing. If this person, when I showed up, hadn't labeled me as a demon or whatever, I wouldn't have taken on this mask. But now they've got all of this negative, quote unquote, unhealthy energy that feeds me. and they've given me a role to play. They've assigned me a role to play, and why shouldn't I do it? So unless that person or that family really, you could say, ups their vibration, they stop being abusive, dishonest, all of that, I'm going to stay here and continue to feed. But then we have the opposite side of the coin too. I've met a ton of non-human people who feed on very healthy, happy, joyful types of energy from human beings too. And so there are a lot of different ways that every single connection and relationship could go, but the human being at the end of the day almost always determines the quality and the quantity and the length of the interaction and contract with that person. And I know that a lot of like the scientists and the religious people get really upset when I say these kinds of things because it doesn't fit into their nice, neat little boxes, especially when it comes to Catholicism or Christianity or Islam. And it also doesn't fit into what they're perceiving to be as solid science, which that's okay too. It's just that if someone's not willing to hear out the other side of the story and at least try my methodology, they can't discount it. They just think that they can. So I've spent a lot of time teaching Artemaeus what I have learned over the years of working with people and exorcism and whatnot. And he had a small case himself where he advised the person exactly as I'm speaking now. And the person came back later on the public record and said, "You're right, it worked."
Wonderful. Artemaeus, did you want to?
Yeah, just to supplement that a little bit too, that it is, many people will find it, at least subconsciously, easier to skirt personal responsibility for these things. It's so much easier for people to say, it's out of my control, these things are harming me, they're doing this to me, I'm just a victim, than to realize that, no, actually, I could quit drinking, I could quit lying, I could quit abusing, other family members and people around me, and that may indeed improve not just my own quality of life, but the people around me. And it would also help to curtail this type of energy that you're putting out that's feeding entities interested in that. So this is again part of, what we keep circling back around with, which is that we have a choice when we become truly conscientious of these things and do what Carl Jung, this known psychologist, called your shadow work. You now can fundamentally change the interaction that you have with non-human entities. Do you want to feel like garbage and do you want to be preyed upon and have poltergeist activity and feel hunted? Or do you want to have fun with this experience? Do you want to love? Do you want to cooperate? Do you want to talk? Do you want to, all these things? You can change that. And it explains why, Karen, you and a lot of neurodivergent people tend to have more positive experiences because they are lower on that ego content generally. And they are able to look at that and go, oh, you're right. I do have a choice here. And I can actually, do something differently. Once you realize that you actually have more control than you think you do, for a lot of people, that in and of itself is kind of scary because then it means that everything you do matters.
Oh,
So
you know what I love about what you're saying too is it fits so nicely into simulation theory. And simulation theory doesn't mean it's not real. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with simulation theory, but the eye of the observer determines the outcome of the experience. And so
Yes.
I'm a big fan. When people go, it's a flat earth, it's a globe earth, I go, oh no, it's a simulation. That's how I see it. And it makes perfect sense. And not trying to cast my thoughts onto your experience, but I'm just saying, it can be what we want it to be. I'm going to just tell you a quick thing. I had problems with a family member where I thought they were the most horrible person in the world. And someone pointed out to me that I was projecting onto that person, and maybe I should start seeing them in my mind's eye as being a good person. I know you guys are not so much into good and bad, but I sort of still live in that. And so I started seeing this person as capable and kind and all these good things, and they changed. Now, they didn't really change. What changed was my perceptual arena, but it taught me such an important lesson. So now what I try to do is to hold people in into a belief that they are good, they are worthy, they can do it, they can make their own decisions, they can find their own way, they don't need me to rescue them, that kind of thing. So anyway, I just thought it was really interesting. I had to throw out the thing about the simulation theory, and even the Monroe Institute, that kind of gets into all of that too. It's pretty exciting. It's pretty juicy. I love the juicy
I
kind of
agree.
topics.
I
Yeah.
agree. And something that non-human people have been telling me for years, and I was visited more recently by a group of them who taught me that pot so we don't burn the house down.
Yeah.
Uh, we have a beautiful pumpkin cast iron cauldron, I guess you could say. And we like to put potpourri mixes in there. And I forgot that I needed to have checked it for the water level before we went on the air because there are apples and some flammable things in there.
Yeah,
So I
yes,
apologize.
yes. No, it's all
Um,
good. It's all good. And actually, our time is nearly up. Denise had asked if your new book is going to be available on Kindle. I'm sure you said it was available in
yes,
digital.
yes.
And uh, and then I guess we're quickly running out of time, but I want to turn it back over to you and Artemaeus when he comes back. In conclusion, what would you like to share with my audience? What would you like to tell them? It can be where to reach you. I'd love it if you would say where to reach you. I know that the links are in the description below, and I updated my links. Thank you very much for sending those over. But it's nice for those that are listening on an audio podcast to actually hear where they can find you. So please do share anything that you would like before we say goodbye. And of course, I'd love to have you back another
Yeah,
time. But also where people could reach you would be wonderful. Thank you.
well, my pleasure. And if you do want to go a little bit longer, we are more than happy to do that, but completely up to you. I did want to finish my thought
Okay.
about what the non-human visitors had taught me more recently that helped me so much. It was that most human beings, because of their ego content, they will say that they want the truth. They will say that they want objectivity, but that's not true for most human beings.
Mhm.
Because if it doesn't align with their predetermined biases, then they're not able to integrate it and comprehend it because to do so would cause them an emotional and an ego injury, and that could actually cause them nervous system distress and be at some point a threat to their own physical survival. And this kind of gets into why perfect disclosure isn't really given to the public here as much as what people say that they want, because a lot of people are not ready for it, and that's okay with me at least. And so in learning and growing in this way, I've come to understand that a lot of people are not purposefully lying here in that way. They just lack the ability to understand that they're not ready yet, and they need to work more on objectivity and getting their own ego and nervous system under control. And so now I never judge someone by what they tell me they want. And then if they can't handle when I give them objectivity, I go into almost every single human interaction knowing that I need to be speaking to where they're actually at right now and not where they say that they're at, if that
Mhm.
makes sense. So that's a
Yep.
big part of the book as well. Um, I have a lot of stories that are based on true accounts, even though they've been fictionalized, that talk about these different types of psychology and how some of those stories have played out over certain human beings' lifetimes. Um, And I think it's really important to have this kind of work, even though it is technically fiction, because it's all based in root truths, at least as I know and understand them. And because through storytelling, people can change and grow and evolve their egos, essentially. And that's part of what I hope to do with my quantum mechanic work, my quantum story collection.
Yes. It's awesome. It's awesome.
That's all I
So,
had.
no, it's awesome. Thank you. And actually, I do have to go soon, but I'm wondering if Artemaeus has anything he wants to add. And then, of course, where can people find you for those listening on audio? It would be great to hear you say the actual where they can hear you.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a little bit to add to that. The ego discussion there is that my personal theory on why somebody would ask for something but then not like the answer is that the asking is coming from their higher self, which is always guiding them further down the road towards their ultimate soul goals. And it's the ego that goes, no, I don't want that, because it forces them to confront something that they have to learn and would be an experience of growth, which, as a lot of people know, is not always comfortable. It's not always pleasant. So, the like I said, the ego is there to help protect you in some way. So for us as humans, the survival thing, being social creatures generally, is that you don't want to be too different, too odd, too out there, not to fit into the group, because if you are, the very real concern is that you will be ostracized, and that means death. So I mean, think about any of the legends or tales of the crazy old lady that lives in the woods in the cottage, who, I mean, I'm thoroughly convinced, at this point, that those were just neurodivergent and or non-human hybrids or people throughout the ages. But that can be a pretty precarious and dangerous existence. And certainly now that we live in this, most of us anyway, an age of opulence where survival on the basic needs, a lot of us have those basic needs met, the ego then turns to social concerns and injury. So if you say something that oh, you really ought to quit drinking, oh no, all of my friends, the people that I know, are all in that circle, and if I don't have my social system, what am I going to do? I'll wither away. But people who have gone to the other side of that, who have quit that circle, realize that none of those people were their friends, or at least they were people of circumstance that were there to support them at that particular moment. And then when they move beyond that, they find a new circle of people that are there for that growth and that person that they are now. So it's just little steps of essentially repeatedly peeking to the other side, the other side, the other side, always. It's interesting how it's repeated just in different realms. But anyway, yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So where can people find you?
Yes. So we can be found on Facebook. It's just Tillie Treadwell. If you search my name, our profile will come up. And then if you search The Weird Walk Home on YouTube, that is our YouTube channel. Right now, we are in the middle of a series, a diary style series with Artemaeus, where he essentially vlogs his 10-year journey with me in every which way, but especially focused on the paranormal. We made partner this past year for the Full Disclosure Now event here in Florida this past July, but we made speakers for next year. So if anyone wants to come hang out with us, we're going to be telling true tales live on stage. There's going to be a nice little dance party. You can ask us questions. We're going to be vendors. We'll have books for sale, my magazines, all of that good stuff. And it should be, I think, a really fun time for anyone who's enjoying their time with us here today. Aside from that, also in January of 2026, we are going to be speaking at a brand new conference, the Cosmic Contact Conference in Maryland. We're going to be there for, I think, 3 or 4 days. It's a 2-day event, but we're going to be speaking, and then we'll also have a booth with lots of good things for sale, including my own handmade organic dessert teas, and I have some very special candles that I'm making up for the event. I might even do some psychic care work there on the spot if I'm feeling well enough. So tarot, oracle, and then hands-on what else? Oh, I'm a writer for Erie Expeditions magazine. I have a very special edition coming October 1st. This is going to be an examination of Jeff the Talking Mongoose, if anyone's familiar with him, but from my exorcist point of view back in the day. And let me see, I have books on Zontar Press. There's Weird Time, Exploring the Mysteries of Time and Space. We have a book about ghosts and poltergeists and the afterlife coming out soon. And then I have a few different volumes coming out with Malcolm Robinson over in the UK, discussing some of my fairy encounters and missing persons events, and then quantum timelines. And I think I'm going to be starting a brand new neurodivergence-based book come this winter. I'll be working with a gentleman named Chris Machan. I hope I said that last name right. Sorry, Chris, if you see this. And then I have contract renewals for all of this fictional series world that I'm building, because Tales from the Rift got that much of a green light from my dear publisher.
Wonderful.
So that's it.
Whoa. Lots of good stuff. Wow. Oh, it's amazing. It's just amazing. So,
And my apologies. I'm so sorry, Karen. I
go
did
ahead.
forget to say that if anyone wants to get more of us tonight, if we haven't yapped enough for you, we're going to be hanging out with Jason Bland over on Paranormal Soup. We're going to be popping in there at 11:30 p.m. tonight, Eastern Standard Time. That's all.
Wonderful. And Artemaeus, did you have any last minute comments or any other links or anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
Nope, just happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much for being here. I've been really looking forward to this. It's just been an absolute pleasure. I wish we could go on further, but I actually only scheduled for an hour. And I want to thank our wonderful live chat, everyone who showed up. And I'm not sure if I said hello to Transcendence, but if I missed you, I want to say hi and thank you for being here. I want to thank my wonderful moderator, Denise. Denise, you are amazing. I am so grateful that I have found you. She shows up to every show. She's just been an absolute #1 supporter of everything I do. And I don't know now what I would ever do without her. You're an absolute true gem, Denise. You really are. And I know Denise has been through some rough stuff in her life too, but she's bouncing back just like the rest of us. So that's about it. Artemaeus and Tillie, I'm wondering if you can hang on just a minute as I close the show down. I just have a couple of quick things I want to ask you, and then we will we'll be done for today. And I hope you all come back on Wednesday for the Quantum Guide Show. And I'm going to be having Ryan Patrick Burns on. We're going to talk about weather modification and so-called climate change. And then next week, I think it's Jeff Selvers is coming to Aliens and Angels. So I hope you all will join us for those. And I guess that's it for today. And I'll say bye-bye, everybody. Hope you have the best week ever. Thank you for joining me for the Aliens and Angels podcast. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available on Amazon worldwide. Subscribe to my YouTube, Rumble, and X channels at Karen Holton TV. The like button and leave me a comment. And please do share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All of the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you'll also find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton on all audio platforms. Until next time. up the good work.